Imagine a storm, not of rain or snow, but of men on horseback, an ocean of them, pouring out from the vast unforgiving steppes of Central Asia. This was the Mongol Empire, forged in the crucible of tribal warfare by a leader of almost supernatural will, Genghis Khan. His name alone whispered fear across continents. By the early 13th century, this empire stretched an unbelievable sprawling behemoth. From the Pacific Ocean, it crept west, relentlessly. Its armies were unlike anything the world had seen, disciplined, brutal, unstoppable. Or so it seemed. They were a force of nature, a hurricane made of flesh and steel. The Russian principalities, the lands of the Rus, were a patchwork, a collection of city-states, often squabbling amongst themselves. Kiev, Vladimir Suzdal, Novgorod, powerful in their own right perhaps, but fragmented. They knew of the storm in the east. Vague rumors at first, tales of cities erased, of kings humbled. But the east was far away, wasn't it? These were stories from distant lands, surely exaggerated. The Rus' princes were proud. They were warriors. They had faced threats before. They had no idea. The Cumans came first, panicked, fleeing. They were nomadic horsemen themselves, tough, warlike. But they had met something new, something terrifying. They begged their Rus' allies for help. Today they have taken our land, they pleaded. Tomorrow they will take yours. Some Rus' princes listened. Mstislav the Bold of Galach, Mstislav Romanovich of Kiev. Others, they saw a threat, or perhaps an opportunity for glory. A grand coalition was formed, a mighty host, or so they believed. They were confident, arrogant even. These were the famed warriors of Rus'. They would teach these eastern barbarians a lesson, a fatal miscalculation. The Mongol generals Jebe and Subutai were masters of the game. They were leading a deep raid, scouting, testing defenses. They were not expecting such a large, combined force. But they were not afraid. They were Mongols. They lured the overeager Rus' and Cuman forces deeper, and deeper, using their classic tactic, the feigned retreat. For days the Rus pursued, their discipline frayed, their formations stretched thin. They thought they had the Mongols on the run. They were chasing shadows that were leading them into a perfectly prepared trap. On the banks of the Kalka River, the stage was set. Kalka was a shock, a devastating blow, but it was only a reconnaissance. The main storm was yet to break. For over a decade, an uneasy quiet settled. The Mongols had vanished back into the steppes. Perhaps it was a bad dream. Perhaps they would not return. Such hopes were illusions. In 1237 they came back, not as scouts but as conquerors, led by Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis. This was the full might of the Golden Horde, an invasion force of unimaginable size and ferocity. This time there would be no escape. This was the real beginning of the end for the old Rus. City after city fell, Ryazan, Kolomna, Moscow, then a minor town, Vladimir, Suzdal. The chronicles speak of utter devastation, of populations put to the sword. Life under the Mongol yoke was a grim reality. The initial shock of conquest gave way to the long, hard grind of occupation. The primary demand of the Khans was tribute: gold, silver, furs, and men. Young men taken for the Mongol armies, or skilled artisans carted off to beautify the Mongol capitals. Tax collectors, the dreaded Baskaki, enforced these demands, often with brutal efficiency. Failure to pay meant punishment, swift, severe. Entire villages could be wiped out. This constant drain of resources bled the Russian lands dry, stifling economic growth and fostering a deep-seated resentment. The political landscape of Rus' was irrevocably altered. The old centers of power like Kiev and Vladimir were diminished. Their influence waned. New centers began to emerge cautiously, painfully. Princes learned that survival depended not just on strength. The Mongol yoke was a period of immense suffering, of humiliation, of stagnation in many ways, but it was not the end of the Russian story, far from it. Adversity, as it often does, forged a new kind of strength, a new kind of resilience, the constant threat, the need to survive. It forced the disparate Russian principalities to look inward, and eventually, towards each other. The shared experience of subjugation, paradoxically, began to lay the groundwork for a future, more unified Russian identity. The memory of Kalka, the ashes of Ryazan and Kiev, these were scars. But scars can also bind. The rise of Moscow is a key part of this story, a small, relatively insignificant principality before the invasion. But its princes proved to be shrewd, patient, and utterly ruthless when necessary. They cultivated good relations with the Khans of the Golden Horde. They became the chief tribute collectors for the Mongols, a position that brought them wealth and power. They used this power to absorb weaker neighboring principalities, sometimes through diplomacy, sometimes through force, all under the watchful eye of their Mongol overlords, who for a time saw a strong Moscow as useful.